Good morning as we are starting our week with the Alter Rebbe, and this week we'll be concluding with the Alter Rebbe, which is Yutet Kislev, the liberation of the Alter Rebbe. Let's start this very basic, fundamental ma'amar, the discourse, which was said in the year 1981, Tafshin Mem Aleph, Pada Beshalom Nafshi Mikhavli Ki Berabim Hayu Imadi. The verse says in chapter 55 of Tehillim, my soul was redeemed when I was at war, because the many were with me. וידועים דיוק כקבדושת אדמו"ר הזקן בעל הגאולה דיוטת כסלו ובנו ממלא מקומו קבדושת אדמו"ר האמצעי בעל הגאולה דיוט כסלו, במה שבפסוק זה מונגש לא רק עניין הבדיה והגאולה בכלל, אלא שהבדיה היא בשלום דווקא. We know what the Alter Rebbe as well as his son, the Mittler Rebbe, which both were liberated on different dates, one on Yud Kislev, the other one on Yutet Kislev from jail, that they explain that this pasuk, it's not only that it says that they were redeemed, that King David was redeemed, ella, that it was done with peace. Moreover, it was done with peace. It says, when I was going out to wrestle, going out to fight, not war. It doesn't use the expression of war, but rather when they came to fight with me. And when they were coming to me, so it was my personal redemption. So there's it was done with peace. 2, it was a fight which is closer. 3, it was a redemption which was personal. גם צריך להבין אומרו, כי ברבים היו עמדים, למשל שזהו הטעם על זה שבדע בנו של נפשי, אומר, מהו עניין בזה? And it says, because the many were with me. And it seems that that's why I was redeemed in peace, because the many were with me. So let's try to explain this pasuk. And as we explain this pasuk, we're going to get some clarity in what Chassidus is. ונקודת הביאור בזה דפדיעה שהיה רק כאשר יש מציאות של עניין מנגד. וכאשר המציאות של צד שכנגד אין צורך ומקום לפתיעה, כיוון שהקדושה היא הדרך היחידה ומציאות היחידה, אבל כאשר יש צד כנגד מציאות של חושר ושיחות חולו, צריך להיות הבדיעה מן החושר ושיחות חולו. It says, when do you need to be redeemed? When there is the other side, another side which is fighting with you. A fight which is opposing you. And if there's no side opposing you, then there's no reason to be redeemed. So when you have the concept of foolishness and darkness opposing you, you will be saved from the foolishness and darkness. ובדיעה זו מביאה שהקדושה תהיה באופן ליתרון האור מן החושך ויתרון החוכמה מן הסכלות. And afterwards, when you were first in darkness and foolishness, and you were redeemed from it, then you're going to be able to appreciate the advantage there is of light over darkness and wisdom over foolishness. היינו על ידי הפגיעה מן החושר והשיחות, על ידי דווקא נעשה יתרון אור וחוכמה, ולא רק יתרון בכמות, אלא גם יתרון באיכות. And it's not only the amount of light and wisdom which is going to be greater, it's going to be the quality of wisdom and light which is going to be greater. Now, when we talk about redeeming somebody, which is very apropos in our days, when we talk about redeeming and saving those who are captives, right? Because the whole concept of b'diah is to save somebody from captivity, right? It could be done in two ways. ב'diah באופן של מלחמה, ב'diah באופן של שלום. One, it could be done in a way of war or in a way of peace. Yeah, that's what we've been trying to accomplish for all these months. He explains in the pasuk, the verse, that he was redeemed in peace. Right? And even when it comes to being redeemed in peace or war, now it was in peace, it could be in two ways. אפשר להיות בבית אופנים. אם הפגיעה היא באופן שעומדים בקירוב על המתברר והמתנבדע, אף שעדיין לא נתברר ונבדע, או שעומדים בריחוק ממנו. וגם בזה מבאר מחדש בפסוק שהפגיעה מקרב לי. So he says, it could be in two ways, in a way of war, which means that I'm far away from the one that I need to redeem, or the person that needs to be redeemed is far away from the Redeemer, or that the fight is one which is more like physical, more body to body, so to say, where you're closer to the one you need to redeem from. היינו באופן הקירוב, כמבואר בדיבור המתחיל, פדה בשלום לאדמו"ר האמצעי, ולי פתיעה בתוקף שאין מקום לשינוי. בכל מקום שנאמר לי, אינו זז לעולם. And what does it mean that I was redeemed, mikrav, in the moment of fighting for me, li? Li, the expression of li, for me, wherever it says li, our sages teach us that it means that there's a certain dimension of power in the li. I was redeemed, and this redemption was with power and gives me power as well. You think about, for example, what just happened in Syria. Right? It was a pretty peaceful type of redemption of Syria, in a way that because it was done this way and because it was done in a peaceful way, there's a certain dimension of power. You know, it's not after many losses, okay, so we won. No, it won. That's it. Yeah. ולי פתיעה בתוקף שאין מקום לשינוי, לכל מקום שנאמר לי, אינו זז לעולם. והטעם על פתיעה זו הוא כי ברבים עמדי. Why was I redeemed in such a way? Because the many were with me. What does it mean the many were with me? שבזה בית פירושים. אחד, דקאי תפילת הרבים, דקאי לגאולה, דקאי לגאולה, שהגאולה היא גם של הרבים. ועל דרך הלשון הידוע, לא אותי בלבד גאלה הקדוש ברוך הוא. He says, there's two ways to look at this. The many were with me. Many people prayed for my success as I was fighting my enemy. That's one. Or the many were with me when I was redeemed. The many were redeemed with me. It's not only my redemption, but it's the redemption of the many. As the Alter Rebbe himself says in his letter, when he came out, he says, כי לא עליי לבדי היה הדבר הזה, כי אם על הבעל שם טוב ותלמידיו, שמזה מובן גם בנוגע לגאולתו. He says, not only this, that I was imprisoned, and I was not permitted to spread Chassidus, this was an imprisonment not only for me, but for the Baal Shem Tov and all of his students, and so on and so forth. And when the Frierdiker Rebbe himself came out of jail, he said, it's not only me that was redeemed, but it was anybody that's Jewish that was redeemed. And today, in hindsight, we see how that's true. You know, at the time you could say, okay, so a Rebbe got redeemed from jail in Russia. What is that concerned the Jew in America 100 years later? Well, today we see what there is and how the Jewish people are being redeemed thanks to that. והנה כל עניינים אלה ישנם בעבודת האדם, ומזה מובן שישנם בתורה. זאת תורת האדם. All these concepts of being redeemed, going out to war, and so on, they find themselves in man. And because they find themselves, we find them in the life of man. And since the Torah is a reflection, is man himself, so we might find these concepts, we must find these concepts in Torah itself. And this is where it's going to get really interesting for us, that we're going to start understanding the great chidush, the great novelty of this, which the Torah Chassidut was liberated and redeemed and permitted to be spread on the day of Yutet Kislev. ועל פי מה שאמרו הז"ל, קודשא ברוך הוא הסתכל באורייתא או ברעלמא, ומובן דאדרבא, העניינים הם בתורה, וממנה נמשכים לעולם. It's really the opposite. Things are in Torah in a certain way. And since God looked in the Torah in order to create the world, therefore what we see in the world is a direct consequence of what's in Torah. וביור עניין. פדה בשלום נפשי. גומר כמו שהוא בתורה. Let's now explain. הנה ידוע, the Torah לא בשמיים. We know the Torah is not in the heavens. It's not in the sky. וניתנה למטה בארץ. It was given down here in the earth to us. והיות שהתורה נמצאת למטה במקום החושך והסכלות. The Torah finds himself in a place of darkness and foolishness, right? I don't have to tell you how much foolishness and darkness we have in this world. It's so obvious. Only the fools and those who are in darkness can't understand they're in darkness and foolishness. צריך להיות עניין הבדיעה בתורה. Therefore, the Torah in such a world has to be redeemed. It has to be redeemed. ועל ידי זה נעשה יתרון האור מן החושך הולו. When the Torah is redeemed, we're going to have the advantage of the light over darkness. ועל פי הידוע שבעולמות עליונים הפשיטות הוא אלוקות והתחדשות הוא המציאות. אבל למטה הוא הפך מזה לגמרי. הפשיטות הוא המציאות וההתחדשות הוא אלוקות, וגילוי האלוקות שצריך להיות התחדשות, הרי זה עניין של בדיעה. So what happens is, what is the difference between the reality of above and our reality? In the reality of above, the reality is godliness. And when you talk about physicality or limitations or a world, well, that's a novelty. What, really? There is such a thing? But when we are in this world of physicality and mortals, and we say, there's a godliness, well, really? That's the way it is. It's like a novelty for us. When you are able to reveal the fact that there is God which renews the world every second, you reveal that to this world, that's a redemption. Right? The same thing with Torah. Right? So when you are redeeming the Torah which affirms the unity of God, in the Torah itself, so this is Torah versus world. על דרך זה בתורה גופה יש כמה שני אופנים, אופן של לימוד התורה כמו שהוא חנך לנער על פי דרכו, כמו שמעריך הרמב"ם פירוש המשניות שלו, שצריך לחפש כמה עצות חולו וכולו כדי שיהיה לימוד, הלימוד והחינוך יתאימו לדרכו של אדם הלומד הנער, לפי מעמדו ומצבו באותה שעה. וישנו אופן של לימוד התורה, שלומד התורה כפי שהיא בשמיים, וגם שלומד התורה בארץ, מכל מקום, אופן הלימוד שלו, הוא שאינו שייך אז כלל למציאות העולם, ואין לו שום קשר עם ענייני העולם. So there's two ways to teach Torah. One way it says, teach the child according to his path, which means you explain the Torah through the lens of the child living in this world, through the lens of the student living in this world. The world exists. That's one way. Another way to teach the Torah is the way it's in heaven, without any consideration whatsoever for the limitations of the student or the person which lives in the reality of this world. מכל מקום, אופן הלימוד שלו שלא שייך כלל למציאות העולם. כמו שיש חילוקים אלה בלימוד התורה, על דרך זה הוא בתורה גופה. Then there's two ways to see in the Torah itself how to learn Torah, which means so far we have the Torah, the way it, the vision of godliness, the way it is, the reality, the way it is above, the way it's below. Once you bring the reality of above and you bring it below, that's the redemption of the foolishness of this world. Once you study the Torah, not the way it's in the parameters of man, but it's in its original state, pure state, the way it's coming from heaven, that's already another redemption. In the Torah itself, there are two levels. כדי תברה ימם, נבין בברכות הקודש. דבעל הגאולה, דבתורה נגלית עץ הדעת טוב ורע, יש בה קשה ומחלוקת. וצריך לומר, וצריך להיות מלחמתה של התורה לתאר אצל עובר המסקנה, ופנימיות התורה יצאת חיים, דלת תמן לא קשיא חולו. ועד למעיינות תורת הבעל שם שנגלתה בדורותינו בתורת החסיד, וזה העניין פנייה בשלום. In the Torah itself, you have the Torah which is connected to war and the Torah which is connected to peace. What's the Torah which is connected to peace? That you say you have to have the war of Torah. When you study Talmud, this rabbi says this Amora says this, and they argue, and you have to know, and you extract the law from this and this, but no, there's something else that comes from another verse, and you can extract it from this verse, no, this verse, that verse, no, not from this word, this letter, not from this letter, and so on and so forth. This is the war of Torah. This comes from the tree of knowledge of good and bad. Then we have the tree which is called Etz HaChaim, the tree of life. The tree of life is where it's so clear, things are just clear, like the secrets of Torah. How much more so when we talk about the Torah of the Baal Shem Tov, Chassidut, that's already the redeeming of Torah in peace within the limitations of this world. We said that the redemption can happen in closeness or in a way that's far. ומבאר ומחדש שפתיעה זו היא מקרב לי באופן של קירוב, ויובן זה על פי ביאור כבודשת אמור הזקן. ומאמר ז"ל המתפלל צריך שייתן עיניו למטה וליבו למעלה, שצריך להיות שייר ורואה גם את המטה, היינו שגם בהיות ליבו למעלה, קשור למעלה, צריך להיות רואה את המטה העולם בענייניו. So good. So now we said that, for example, when you're at war, you can save the enemy. Let's say you could save the one that needs to be redeemed from far, or you can actually be much closer, which means you have a direct contact, physical contact almost, with those who are taking in captivity the one which is in captivity. Here, when we talk about Torah Chasidut, it says it was done mikravli. It was done in closeness. It wasn't done far. What does that mean? It could have been that the Torah Chasidut would have been redeemed in a way that the Chassidut would have been redeemed in a way that it would have been revealed the level of Torah that has nothing to do with this world. I'm going to redeem it, but it's going to be redeemed and it's going to be revealed a level of Torah which has nothing to do with this world. Here we're saying that the Torah was revealed in a way that it's actually involved in this world. It's in closeness. Let's explain. It says, for example, the person that prays, צריך להיות ליבו למעלה ועיניו למטה. It says a person that is praying, right? It says in the Gemara of Yevamot that he needs to have his eyes below and his heart above. So he needs to recognize that there is a world. It's not only his eyes and his heart above, and I'm just disconnecting myself from the world, and that's how the Torah is going to be redeemed. No, there needs to be a connection to the world. And so too we understand when it comes to the study of Torah. שלימוד התורה צריך להיות באופן כזה שיביא לידי מעשה. The purpose of the study of Torah is not only to escape the world and to attach ourselves to the reality of emet, of Hashem, of the truth of God, but rather that it should affect the world. It should be practical. As it says, Kema'amar Chazal, just like our sages teach us, Gadol Talmud shemevii lidei maaseh. Great is the study that brings to action. או שלימודו הוא לעסוק השמטתה אליבא דהלכתה. המסקנה להלכה למעשה בענייני העולם, אשר דווקא אז היה על ידי הלימוד באופן כזה, הוא בא אל אמיתית הבנת הלימוד והכוונה. He says, what is the purpose? The purpose is to bring that the study of Torah should bring to halakha, to practical law. And like this, we're going to apply it in this world. So now we already found that that the way the Torah Hasidut is redeemed, we learned that it has to do with this world. It's not in a way that Torah Hasidut is something which is aloof, separated. You study Kabbalah, for example, you're separated from the world. We're talking about different levels which are not going to be absorbed within this reality. We said, because the many were with me and therefore I was redeemed. This was all done, we said, because of the prayer of the many. Even if a person is complete and perfect, his prayer is taken to another level, to a quantum leap, when he prays with the assembly, with the minyan. Tfilat harabim, and especially when it's the prayer of the many. כמובן גם מתפילת 10 ימי תשובה, שאמרו רז"ל, הטעם ביחיד אחר בציבור, שתפילת היחיד בעשרת ימי תשובה היא כמו תפילת הרבים בשאר ימות השם. מכל מקום אינו דומה תפילת היחיד בעשרת תשובה לתפילת הרבים בעשרת ימי תשובה. Just like it says concerning the 10 days of penitence, that the prayer of one has the power of praying with 10 on the days of 10 days of penitence. But imagine the prayer of 10 during the 10 days of penitence. It's another level altogether. So this was the first explanation. The first explanation was that the prayer of the many had a tremendous impact to be able to save the Alter Rebbe right from jail. That it includes, the second explanation is that it includes all of the Jewish people. מובן על פי מה שמביא בעל הגאולה וסידור ומאריזה שנוכל לומר קודם תפילה, אני מקבל עליי מצוות הזה של ואהבת לרעך כמוך. האמירה זו היא לפני מה טובו וכולו, ונמשכת בכל דרגות ושלבי התפילה. מה טובו הודו להשם וכולו תפילת העמידה, ועל לתפילת עלינו לשבח וכולו, ועל כן נקווה וכולו, שאמרה ישוע בן נון שכבש את ארץ ישראל בפעם הראשונה ובאופן נחלת עולם. בכל פרטים בדרגות אלה בתפילה הם בשלמותם על ידי קבלת מצוות עשה של אהבת ישראל. We see that in the beginning of the prayer we do something that includes everyone. What do we say? We say, I accept upon myself the mitzvah to love my fellow Jew as myself. By doing so, we're taking our prayer to another level as well, because this is the prayer of the many, and this includes the many, right? So this includes the many, and this goes from the moment we say Hodu all the way to the prayer of Alenu Shabech, which was composed by Yeshua when he conquered the land of Israel. וירצון שכל אחד ואחת יעשה את כל התלוי בו לקיים את הבקשה מנתינת כוח של בעל הגאולה להפיץ את המעיין חוצה. The Rabbi concludes with the words that may everybody do whatever they can to be able to do what they the one who was redeemed, which is the Alter Rebbe, to spread the sources of Chassidut, the wellsprings of Chassidut outwards. This all happened, really started to happen after the Alter Rebbe was liberated. That's the moment that Chassidut started to spread.